Hello, welcome back. My name is Nathan House, and I am with the Houston Church of Christ in Houston, California. And if you could like or subscribe to this video, that would be appreciated. We're going to do a short couple of videos on the book of Habakkuk, a minor prophet. Maybe it's a book you've studied, maybe it isn't, but it is an interesting, small little book here. Let's go ahead and get into this so we don't waste too much of your time. So, the book of Habakkuk, the time of it was written around 600 to 610 BC. Now, putting this kind of in our Old Testament memory, where does this fit? Remember that the nation of Israel, the northern nation, was already taken captive. They were taken captive by Assyria and Nineveh, so they were taken captive by these people around 722 BC. And then the nation of Judah was existing alone, if you will. And so the nation of Judah, the southern nation, was now going to eventually go into captivity as well. 586 would be kind of their last hurrah, if you will, when Babylon, the new power, would come in and take Judah captive. Good King Josiah dies in about 609 BC, and Judah, the nation of Judah, is growing more sinful. This is written about the same time as Jeremiah is, so Habakkuk and Jeremiah were contemporaries, along with possibly some other Old Testament prophets as well. So the times were tough. Judah was sinful, and God is telling them, we're going to see in a minute, that a new nation, Assyria, again, is on the downfall, right? They've even been kind of eliminated by this point as a world power. But Babylon is the new world power. Babylon is the new dominating nation. And so God tells them that Babylon, also known as the Chaldeans, they are going to come. And we're going to see that God's going to tell Habakkuk this. They're going to come against Judah. So again, here is the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom. They were taken captive by Assyria. Judah will fall eventually to Babylon. So this is that time frame when they have not yet fallen to Babylon, but it is coming very soon. So here's kind of, again, how the book is laid out, its structure. Habakkuk has a question or a complaint. God answers his question or complaint. Habakkuk doesn't like God's answer. How many times do we not like God's answers? We offer a prayer, we ask God to intervene in our life, and maybe his answer is not what we wanted. So anyways, Habakkuk doesn't like God's answer, so he has another question, another complaint, and God answers it again. And finally, in the third chapter, we see Habakkuk praise God. So especially the first two chapters, what we see is that from Habakkuk's point of view, God is not doing what is right. God is not just. There is a lack of justice at the very beginning regarding how he views Judah's mistreatment of other Jews. We're going to see God's answer then makes him think God is unjust as well. So anyways, we're going to kind of notice that there is this apparent, and I'm going to underline that word apparent, and apparent injustice. Why do I underline that? Because from our perspective, from a human viewpoint, it might seem this way. But again, we all know that we don't have the vision, the knowledge that God has. So anyways, let's go ahead and look at a couple other things. So some key words, key phrases that this small book has: violence, wickedness, other terms of destruction as well, and you can kind of see some of those terms. Justice, salvation, Yahweh 12 times, nations or people, so two different phrases, right? 13 times total as he talks about other people, other nations. And the key verse of this whole book, one that's quoted a few times in the New Testament by the Apostle Paul and some others as well: the righteous shall live by faith. So a very significant quote that we will see in the New Testament as well. So this quote is spoken by God in response to Habakkuk's second question. We won't look at that until next time. But before we get into the actual book of Habakkuk, I want you to see that the complaint of Habakkuk is not anything new. We see Old Testament prophets complaining and struggling with God and God's wisdom. Notice Jeremiah chapter 12. Righteous are you, O Lord, when I complain to you. So again, notice Jeremiah's words. When I complain to you, yet I would plead my case before you. What is it that Jeremiah doesn't like? A siren goes by. What is it that Jeremiah doesn't like? Why does the way of the wicked prosper? So Jeremiah is complaining because the wicked are prospering. Why do all who are treacherous thrive? You plant them and they take root. They grow and produce fruit. You are near in their mouth and far from their heart. But you, O Lord, you know me. You see me. You test my heart toward you. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter and set them apart for the day of slaughter. How long? Again, notice this phrase, how long? How long will the land mourn and the grass of every field wither? For the evil of those who dwell in it, the beasts and the birds are swept away, because they said, he will not see our latter end. So Jeremiah is complaining, the wicked, they're prospering, the treacherous are thriving. They don't think that God sees what's going to happen to them. So Jeremiah is saying, God, how long are you going to let this go on? A righteous man complaining about the injustice that he sees. Here's another interesting passage, Psalm 73. Truly God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet almost stumbled, my steps nearly slipped. Why? What was the problem for the psalmist? Why did he almost stumble? Why did his feet almost slip? For I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. You see, so there is this, going back to Jeremiah, how are the wicked doing so well? God, why are you letting those who are unrighteous and unkind and wicked and treacherous do so well? The psalmist has a similar complaint. I saw the prosperity of the wicked. So let's go ahead and quickly look at Habakkuk, and I'll put it on the screen here for you. Let me do that. So it says, the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. So here's Habakkuk's complaint, his initial complaint or question session, if you will. Oh Lord, how long? We just saw this similar phrase, didn't we? How long shall I cry for help and you do not listen? You will not listen. You will not hear. Or cry to you violence and you will not save. Why do you make me see iniquity? Why do you, look at what he says of God, why do you idly look at wrong? Why are you not doing anything, God? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed. Justice never goes forth. The wicked surround the righteous, and justice goes forth perverted. It doesn't ever go forth, or it goes forth perverted. But Habakkuk has a complaint against God. And Habakkuk's view, what is he talking about here? He's looking at the sins within his own nation of Judah. He's looking at the sins that the Jews are committing against themselves. He sees the violence that Jew is committing against Jew. He sees what is a lack of justice amongst the people of God. And he says, how long, God? How long shall I cry to help for help and you don't hear? Where are you, God? Why aren't you listening? Why aren't you hearing? You don't do anything. You're idly looking at all these wrong things and you're not intervening. Sometimes in our own life, it seems like God's not intervening, right? We look at the world around us and there's wickedness and immorality and, all of these things that are discouraging and sad. And we sometimes think, God, where are you in all of this? Look at God's response to Habakkuk. Look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded, for I'm doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. I'm doing something that you wouldn't even believe if I told you, Habakkuk. And by the way, in a minute we'll see that Habakkuk doesn't believe it, doesn't want to believe it. He does not like God's answer. He doesn't like God's answer, so he doesn't want to believe it. He's struggling to believe it. God tells him, you won't believe it even if I tell you. Look at what God says he is doing to deal with, think about it. How is God going to deal with the injustice, wickedness of Judah? How is God going to deal with the injustice and wickedness that is occurring among his own people? Look at what God says he's doing to deal with this. Behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who marches through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice, not God's justice, their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. They are their own justice. They're dreaded and fearsome. They go through the nations. They march down this bitter and hasty nation. He talks about their military power here. He says in verse 9, they all come for violence. All their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff. At rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men. So God now says of these Babylonians, guilty men whose own might is their God. God is not singing the praises of the Babylonian people. He talks about their military power. He talks about their military success. But he does not say they're good people. In fact, he says they're bitter and hasty. They're dreaded and fearsome. They come for violence. They're guilty men. But here's God's answer. Okay, Habakkuk, I'm going to bring the nation of Babylon against Judah to punish them. Can you imagine this from our perspective as Americans, for example, to kind of put it in our perspective? What if we were crying out to God, God, there's a lot of problems in our country. God, when are you going to do something? God, when are you going to make it right? And then God says, okay, I'm going to bring some terrorist country against you. I'm going to use this horrible, violent, terrorist country, and they're going to come in and punish America. Would you stop and think like, whoo, I didn't like that answer. That's not the answer I wanted, God. And so that's how it is with Habakkuk. God says, I'm going to deal with the injustice, Habakkuk. I'm going to deal with the problem in Judah, and I'm going to deal with it through a wicked nation. The answer to your question, Habakkuk, is I will punish Judah with the nation of the Babylonians. Habakkuk doesn't like his answer. Look at what Habakkuk says. Habakkuk, the ESV has this heading, right? Habakkuk's second complaint. Look at what Habakkuk says. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. And perhaps this should be with a question mark. We're not going to die, are we? You're not going to wipe us out, are we? O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof? Wait, God, I'm trying to get this right. You're trying to tell us that you're going to use Babylon to punish Judah. You who are of pure eyes and to see evil, you cannot look at wrong. Why do you, again, look at this phrase. He complained about God being idle earlier. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up? Look at this. This is a very significant statement. When the wicked, talking about the Babylonians, swallows up the man more righteous than he. He's talking about Judah. You're going to let Babylon, the wicked, the more wicked nation, right? Comparatively speaking, he is saying that Babylon is worse than we are. And you're going to let them swallow us up? Now, again, Habakkuk is not saying that Judah is righteous. Just simply by comparison to Babylon, they're righteous. He talks about again Babylon and their violence here. Look at what he says. Habakkuk comes to the end of his complaint, and he says, I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out, watch what Habakkuk says, to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. God, I'm going to take my stand here and wait for your answer to my question, my complaint. Kind of reminds me of the book of Job, right? Okay, God, I don't like that answer, so here's my rebuttal. Now I wait your reply. So as we kind of introduce this short book, it's built around Habakkuk's complaint, God's answers. Habakkuk complained that Judah was wicked and evil, wants God to intervene. God says, I will intervene. I'm going to bring the Babylonians, and they will be my sword, my punishment of Judah. To which Habakkuk says, I don't like that at all. They're more wicked than we are. How could you do this? So he now will wait God's response. So here's some significant points from chapter 1. First of all, God knows what's happening, right? We may think, God, you don't pay attention. God, you're not watching. God, where are you? But God knows what's happening. God knows. And here's another thing. God punishes. We look at the book of Psalms. We have these Psalms that are called Psalms of imprecation, imprecatory Psalms, right? Psalms, prayers where the psalmist is asking God to strike down the wicked. We need to pray for justice. We need to pray that those who are violent and abusive and murderers, we need to pray that God holds them accountable. We don't want them to go to hell. That's not the point. But we need to pray that God holds the wicked accountable, that God holds these people who are doing violence accountable. And here's the thing. God does punish. God will punish. But the thing is here's another point that Habakkuk was struggling with, and sometimes, most of the time, we do as well. God works in his ways and in his time. Way too often we want God to work how we want God to work and in the time frame we want God to work in. But as Isaiah reminds us, seek the Lord while he may be found, call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. Look at what God says. Neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. We're not God. We can't see things like God. So we just simply need to be men and women of faith who cry out to God, God, we need your help. Cast our concerns upon him, trust in him, for we have a God who at times may surprise us with his answers. We may not always like his answers, we may not always like his time frame, but we are a people that need to be faithful and trusting in a God who cares for his children, who knows what's right, who has our best interest in mind. Anyway, join me as we look at Habakkuk chapter 2 next time. You guys have a blessed day.